Hello, welcome to my video on how to weave in your ends when you're finished knitting. I have just finished knitting a fun, colorful leg warmer here with some self-striping yarn, which means I only have an end at the beginning and at the end to weave in. And I just thought I would show you how that's done. So there are different ways, but I'm going to show you my favorite way, which is to use something called a crewel needle. That means it has a large, generous eye, but it has a sharp tip, not a blunt, rounded tip like a lot of wool and tapestry needles have. This is my favorite needle for weaving in ends. So you can see, because this work was done in the round, which is essentially worked in a spiral, you do end up with a notch when you fasten off your last stitch here, where there's this little dip here going down to the row below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by smoothing that over with one joining stitch, then I'll weave in the end. Now just a quick tip on threading your yarn. That can be really frustrating even if you do have a bigger eye. This is sock weight yarn, so it's not bad, but thicker yarn can be pretty tough. So what I always like to do is just fold over the yarn like this and make a loop, and then I just pinch it between my thumb and index finger, and then run the eye of the needle back and forth like this, and then just pinch the yarn. Oops, try that again. There we go. Pinch the yarn and pull it up through like that. It works really well. So now I am going to work from the right side first while I smooth out this notch. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to find the place down here where I want this yarn to kind of join and kind of bridge that gap for me. And I'm going to go, I think, right there. I'll just work my needle in there. There, and do you see how that just closed up the gap? It's virtually invisible now. You really can't see where the beginning and end is. So I'm really pleased with that. So I'm going to keep it just like that, and now I'm going to turn it and work on the wrong side. Now ideally you want to stay with the same color as your tail. So I'm going to work my end into this purple area, and I'm not going to travel into the blue area. That'll make it much less visible. And I'm also going to keep my weaving on the inside. I'm going to make sure my needle doesn't go all the way through, and I'm using my fingers on the back side to feel for that. They're going to be there, and I'm going to make sure I don't feel the needle poking through when I put it in. So I'm going to pick a spot right about here, and I'm going to start pushing the needle through the stitches in a straight line, and I'm just kind of doing this little jiggling motion so that I am picking up a few threads from each stitch. I'm not going all the way under the stitches, and by pulling the yarn through the stitches rather than under and over them, it makes it very secure. They're going to really hold on to that tail and keep it in place for me, especially because I'm working with wool. Wool is really nice for that. It's really sticky and holds on to its neighbors. And now once I've pulled it through, I'm just going to stretch it out a bit because I want to make sure I haven't lost any stretchiness and that it doesn't pucker and get stiffer in this one spot. And then I'm going to change directions, and I'm going to move over slightly. I never want to pull the tail through the exact same spot. So I'm going to just skim the top of the stitches going back in the other direction. And the nice thing about doing this way is it's very secure, just as secure as if I was tying a knot, but it avoids having to use any knots at all, which can be bumpy and unsightly and tend to work their way to where you don't want them to be. So this that's why this is my favorite method. So now I've changed directions. I'm going back the other way again, just skimming the stitches, and give it a nice tug and pull, make sure it's still stretchy. And then I'm going to go back one more time. And with a sticky wool like this one, that is good enough. If I was doing a slippery, smooth yarn like bamboo or silk, linen or cotton, I'd do a few more passes just to be sure that the tail isn't going to go anywhere. But with this wool, that is good. So then you just take your scissors, snip the tail carefully, as close as you can get without cutting your knitting. And there it is, all done. Now I am going to go and block it.